Just give a couple seconds here to let everyone join. Probably get started at 12:02 on the button.
Okay.
For everyone joining, we're just going to give it a couple seconds so everyone can hop on. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us over your lunch hour for our webinar in sponsorship with EDR and the SNBA. My name is Jamie Polsom, and I am a program coordinator with WESC, and I'd like to give a big shout out to today's webinar sponsor, W Law. Our topic today is Managing Employer Branding, presented by Larry Anderson from Chess Club and Shauna Caldwell from Insightrix. If you do have any questions for them as we go through the presentation, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box, not the regular chat box. However, please feel free to use the regular chat box to introduce yourselves and chat about your businesses. As always, this webinar will be recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing, and you'll receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recording. With that, I'm going to pass it over and let the presentation begin.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. All right. So welcome, you guys. Thank you for joining us today, especially on this cold day. Someone told me it was -42 and I almost keeled over. I don't know why Saskatchewan would give us warm weather and then hit us with this bad weather. Today we're talking, or I guess to introduce ourselves, as Jamie already kind of did. My name is Larry Anderson. My real name is Larissa, but everybody just calls me Larry. I am the Chief Relationship Officer and part owner at Chess Club.
Perfect. And I'm Shauna Caldwell, Chief Revenue Officer at Insightrix Research. And I was just watching the front slide there, Larry, and all I can see is pizza. And now I'm super hungry. So especially on a cold day, it's like comfort food just has a different kind of appeal.
Exactly. We'll have to go get pizza after. Or maybe we'll just video chat each other so we don't have to leave in the cold. So today we are talking about employer branding and why it is more important than ever in today's market and industry. Because if you're not first pick, then you're going to be last pick in the talent management race. So first, we're going to get Shauna started with some stats.
Perfect. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about some facts. So Insightrix recently did a survey about 230 individuals who either work in the tech sector, are entrepreneurs, or are currently looking for work. And we thought we'd share just some of the key findings from those results with you. First of all, 90% of them said that they would do research on a company before applying for a job. So thinking about that in terms of, all of your digital presence, your website, social media, Google reviews, do those currently display anything about your company's values or the goals of the company? Or are they purely just focused on, the products and services that you offer? Next, 77% would look for online reviews, while 66% would look directly at your social media channels to research a company. So I know not everyone is super excited or extremely active on social media, but we are seeing more and more of a benefit to keeping up with kind of your organic digital presence, especially now that you see that shift from Google being, less of an information source, to your social media platforms. And so lastly, before I turn it back over to Larry to talk about exactly what we're here to do today on employer branding, we thought we'd share the top 5 factors for these individuals when looking for an employer. So it's no real surprise to anyone. Compensation and benefits kind of is right up there at the top, followed by a flexibility in the work environment at 80%, to looking at positive referrals from current employees. So looking at those that already work for you and what are they saying about your company that would appeal to me as someone that's kind of looking to want to apply for a job. Lastly, alignment with my core values. So does the company's values align with how I feel personally? And lastly, is there a clear mission and values about the company that I can identify with? So from all of this, the research is basically screaming at companies that we need to pay more attention to your digital and your external presence. And do they showcase, from everything that you're communicating, do they showcase your values and benefits of working at your company? So I will turn it back over to Larry, just kind of kick a start on employer branding.
Yes, perfect. So just to give a little bit of context to the relationship between Shauna and I and Insightrix and Chess Club, is that we met over the summer and we both saw a gap in external research and the creative and branding aspects that was going on at agencies. Some agencies do have internal research, but not to the extent that Insightrix was giving and the value that we're providing. So we teamed together on some branding projects, and then we saw this real need for employer branding. So this is how we kind of developed this presentation together. And yeah, we're really excited to explain it to you guys. So what is employer branding? So it is a component of your overall brand and marketing dedicated to the employment experience. So this communicates the values, the reputation, compensation models, benefits, and the culture of your organization. So it is a subset of your organization's overall brand. And how I like to explain it, because when you think of brand, it just means you automatically think or your organizational brand, but it's much deeper than that. And it's much deeper using the Spice Girls reference. So Shauna has said that maybe I should sing this Spice Girl song, but I'll hold off for now. I'll save it to the end. But if we think of it as your overall brand of your organization is Spice World, and then you have these brands underneath that represent, it could represent employer brands, product brands, service brands, CSR brands. They're each individually different. They may target a different demographic. They may be B2B, they may be B2C. All of them have different objectives, but they all come back to that organizational brand. So employer brand does fit within the organization's brand, but it may be different, as you would be targeting or talking to your employees different than you would be talking to your consumers or your B2B market. And I love this reference because who doesn't like the Spice Girls? Another way to speak to employer brand is I like to go through the theories of motivation. So I'm sure everyone is aware of Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory. I'm pretty sure we all had to do it in high school at some point. Well, this dude, David McLennan, 20 years later, explored that theory just a little bit further and narrowed it down to a basic trifecta of motivation, which is achievement, power, and affiliation. Now, he took his study and he directly related it to the work motivation. He stated that each one of us is motivated by one or more of these needs. And if your dominant need is not met at work, then there is a risk of that person becoming demotivated at work and leaving for something to fulfill that motivation. I did put a sheet in the chat. It's a PDF, it's a fact sheet, and at the very bottom, there is a QR code. And if you guys have a minute, just open that up, scan the QR code, and there is an access code underneath. And just vote on what your motivation theory is on that. And at the end of the presentation, we'll go through and see what everybody's motivation one or what the popular one is. Oh, it only sent to Pal. Oh, I will send it again. One moment, please. I want to make sure that everyone gets this. Okay, let me know if people got that. Okay, we'll move on, and if we'll figure out the QR code later on because it takes like 2 seconds. So an example of employer branding that I like to show everybody is the Heineken Go Places example. So this was a campaign that started in 2019. Heineken took or focused and celebrated 33 of their employees globally. Before they started this campaign, though, they conducted research of their 15 markets around the world. They wanted to understand what brand and the campaign should focus on. And from that research, they kind of created 3 core values that they were going to focus on for this Go Places campaign. They were going to focus on authenticity, transcendence, and long-term brand management. I'm going to share one of their clips with you guys so we can watch it. It's about a minute. Oh, sorry.
We ask, got a minute? You think, wait a minute. You say, I know you. We think, but do you? We say, come along. You ask, but where to? We say, you think about it. You think. You say yes. We guessed you'd say yes. You ask where to start. We say, follow your heart. You think we're one brand. We say we are more. You ask, how much more? We say, so much more. More than 250 brands, more than 70 countries. You ask, will you mold me? We say, we will stretch you. You think you can be more. We say, you can be more! You ask, how much more? There is so much more in store. Learn a craft, learn a trade. There's a journey to be made. Choose a path or go off it. It's up to you. You thought, you asked, now we say, do. You think, do I have what it takes? We know you have what it takes. You ask, where will we go? We say, we don't know. You show us.
So that is a perfect example of a motivation of achievement. So they're basically saying, you say you want to do this, we say yes. So that is goal-oriented motivation that only people that are motivated by achievement or goals or setting them themselves would respond to this. And that's exactly what they wanted to do with this Go Places, is attract the right people to be motivated within Heineken. Right. So now what? We've seen the example. We know what employer branding is. We've read the stats. We know where we stand. We are going to go through how to create an employer brand strategy. So within the employer brand strategy, there is, you complete an audit of your current perception. So how people view your current employer brand, your employee personas. You define the differentiators, determine the channels that you're going to be displaying on, and create an employer value proposition, create brand guidelines, and establish KPIs. So once I did include the employer fact sheets as well, so you can follow along there, and those could be your takeaways as well. But we'll start with Shauna with some research.
Perfect. And this is another reason why when Larry and I met in the summer, we get along so well, is because we both love numbers and data and putting some evidence beside our decisions. So obviously research, working at Insightrix is my favorite thing to talk about. So let's look at kind of what we mean by research when it comes to employer branding. And so that's kind of a holistic brand evaluation. So in short, what we're trying to do is examine your brand from all possible angles. So meaning potential employees, so everyone who doesn't currently work for you, and then evaluating it against your current employees, so everyone who does. The goal of this kind of holistic brand evaluation is really to generate and confirm alignment in the perceptions of your brand across these two groups. So really what we're trying to do, as I mentioned, the numbers, we want to put numbers behind the saying, are we what we say we are? And so there are many facets to who we are, what we want to represent versus what maybe we communicate, and then how others outside of an organization or even inside interpret those things. And so without trying to dissect the psychology of all of that and how it's connected, because to be honest, I don't think that I could. What I really want to do is really focus on how measuring your brand from both an external and an internal level can help us create this alignment. So first of all, we'll look at the external side of things. So this is a broad overview of your brand and how it is perceived and recognized amongst those outside of your organization. So those could be your potential candidates. Really, we would work with you and work with an agency like Chess Club to come up with the best possible way to evaluate this. This can be done through a survey or secondary research. Maybe you've already conducted a bit of it in-house. And we'll kind of, tailor that approach to what meets your needs. So what's covered in this external phase of the research is really we want to try and understand what people are seeing of your brand. So things like your logo, your brand colors, your website, social media analytics, your letterheads. Are people outside of your organization able to recognize your brand? And most importantly, when we look at all those things, are they consistent? So ways that we can kind of get at that through the questions that we might ask of that general public is, what do they recognize of your brand? How would they describe your brand? So do things like the logo or the colors come out in those descriptions? Have they ever connected with your brand, and what is that experience, and how can they kind of relate that to what you really want to portray? What do they currently know about your brand? And do they know anyone who currently interacts with your brand or works at the company? This kind of goes back to that, positive referrals from current employees, and how does that impact their perceptions of your brand? Lastly, does the brand solve a unique problem for them, or is there anything that would make them more interested to consider this as a company or employer to work for? So why does all of that matter? From the external piece of research and the external audit, we really get a collective idea of how you present yourself to those that don't have a direct connection to you. And what this really tells us is, are we represented in a way that we think we are? And are we resonating with the general public in a way that aligns with our core values? So we've done the external, now we'll kind of flip it and we'll do the internal piece. So the internal piece is an insider look at the brand and how you're perceived and recognized amongst those that do have a direct connection to you. So these could be your employees, your founders, investors. And really, again, similar to the external, we can do this in a variety of primary research methods, working with you and with an agency like Chess Club, depending on the audience you're trying to reach. It might be a survey, it might be more of a in-depth interview. If you're looking at maybe those founders or investors where it's harder to get their time, we might recommend that approach. Some of the things that we cover in the internal side of the audit is very similar to the external. However, we take a bit of a different spin on it, if you will. So instead of looking at things like your logo and your website and those things that are kind of out there for the general public to see, we're really looking at how you communicate internally. So this would be on things like your newsletters, policy changes, training programs, new hire packages. Do all of these things clearly represent the company's mission and core values to those that have a connection to you? So specifically what the internal side of the research wants to do is we want to get employees or investors, founders, anyone that has that connection to play back to us what we are trying to portray as an organization. How can we do this? We ask questions like, describe the company's overall brand to us. Can you describe the mission and vision of the company? What problems do you think that our company or brand currently solves for our target audiences? And lastly, this is one of my most favorite, but what is your unique role in conveying our brand's purpose? And so I'll just share a little bit. I'm sitting right now in a phone booth in our office, and I can see what Insightrix wants to portray. We blasted on the wall internally. So there's words like innovation, respectful, accountable, fun. And as I'm looking at that, I'm also looking at who's sitting in the office, and I can see our CFO, I can see, a research manager, I can see a software developer, there's myself as the CRO. So looking at those words and each one of our roles, we each have a different, how that would relate to us, how we maybe showcase those things and how it represents Insightrix to the general public, right? And to our daily interactions. And how am I being innovative right now as I'm speaking to you, while also making sure that I'm in alignment with Insightrix values? So it's very unique, that one question, because I find it can relate to every single individual that has a connection to your company. And lastly, how would these people that have that connection suggest improvements to your brand? So what does the internal piece really tell us? We get an in-depth overview of how you are performing on the things that you want to portray. And lastly, it really helps us measure, are we holding up on the most important things that we need to maintain a strong brand? So before I turn it back over to Larry to talk a little bit more about all the other pieces, we want to put these two things together. So by having the external and the internal perspectives, it really allows us to test that saying, are we what we say we are? So we know that people are going to talk about their experiences. Human nature leads us to share those experiences by word of mouth. Those spread, especially even more so in a digital kind of context. So really by evaluating ourselves against our core values from both an outside and insider perspective, we can easily start to see where there might be gaps in this alignment. And it's in those gaps that really help us create new opportunities to engage in different ways, or to create that consistency that maybe we're not quite seeing. And so that's where the rest of the strategy, working with an agency like Chess Club, you can take the evidence, the numbers, and really start to put that into action. So again, I always have to leave on this. It's one of my favorite brand quotes that I've ever heard. Again, I don't know who said it, but if I leave you with anything, it's to remember that your brand is a promise, and that we have to keep our promises, especially if we want to be seen as credible.
Awesome, Shauna. I thought we talked last time. You should just take credit for it.
Yeah, it's me. I came up with it, yes.
Yeah, and then someone's gonna come for you and they'll be like, thanks a lot, Larry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have a window as well, but it looks into the kitchen and there are some very tasty lunches happening. So I'm sad. So after research, we go into, I'll apologize here. We go to the employee personas. So after we gather the external and internal research, you can create employee personas that will help you to target the personality, the aspirations, and the skill sets that fit your culture's needs. And for this, I go back and I start with the trifecta of motivation to kind of categorize them by motivation, and then you dig deeper into their skills. So what I mean by that is saying, let's say you find out in research that most of the people that you're trying to target or that are in your company right now are really motivated by the achievement status. So setting goals for themselves and achieving those goals. So you'd have those two categories, but the skill sets underneath will be very different. If let's say you have a salesperson that is targeted for, are motivated by achievement, and then you have an IT that is also like that. Those skill sets required for each of those positions would be different, but the motivation is still there. So you still want to target those people, but you got to understand what achievement motivates those IT people and what achievement motivates those salespeople. And that is how you kind of develop their personas. And when you enter the market or when you're using employer branding, or just to understand what kind of people want to work for your company. After the employee persona and how you kind of developed, and you could have multiple personas, or you could just have a few. I know for our agency, it takes all kinds and kinds to run this agency, like creative, sales, introverts, extroverts, but most of us are motivated by achievement and setting those goals, but we would have multiple employee personas that we'd be reaching out for. Next, you want to define the differentiators. So the differentiators is the base of creating your employer brand story. This is the core piece of it. It defines who you are and how you're different from people. Netflix has a really good differentiated employer brand story. They categorize themselves as being really open-minded, friendly, has a great organizational culture, and really employee-centered. So they started looking at this saying, okay, this is how we're different. And they're based in US, and they're the ones that has the closest parental leave in as a large organization as to Canada, which is revolutionary for that, especially in that industry, in that space. So not only are they making small steps like that and helping parents grow in their industry, but on Glassdoor, have been the best rated company by employees for about 2 years now. So not only are they saying that this is why we're different and we're employee centered, the employees are now backing it up. So it goes hand in hand that they are actually proving that differentiator. That goes back to Shauna's favorite quote, or Shauna's quote now, who knows?
Larry made me quote it, yeah.
Yeah. So when you do find your differentiator, make sure that you can back it up, just like Netflix did, and ensure that your strategy, your KPIs, and all your tactics support that differentiator. Otherwise, it will not be successful and people will see you as unauthentic. So after you find the employee personas, define the differentiators, you can determine what channels you are going to set this communication on. So once you know what defines your employer brand, we need to find where these individuals are living in the space in the digital world and communicate that message and make sure that it resonates with them. So usually I start by demographic, and that usually dictates what platforms this personas or this demographic will usually utilize. And from there, you incorporate that employer branding onto your digital and social strategy. So if you don't have a social strategy or digital strategy yet, you just want to make sure that you have a pillar or organic posts that correlate to your employer branding. So let's say you post 2 or 3 times a week. You want to make sure that one of those posts goes back to your differentiators and targets those personas that you're trying to hit, or those motivators in there. And it's constant attraction, that's constant awareness that you're building for employer branding. Now, you don't have to always have to target on a digital space. There's traditional models too. And if you don't have social, or you don't have a heavy digital presence, you want to update it on your website as well. Make a page dedicated to that differentiator and those personas, and constantly update that as you progress on. So going back to the traditional methods too, is current employees are a great way to communicate this. And how you do that is explain it to your employees. This is our differentiator. If they agree and they're like, yes, this is exactly who we are. This is how we're different. This is how our culture is different, how our organization operates. They're going to go and promote that for you if they're on board. So you want to make sure, and that goes into the research, the external, internal, just to fact check it before you launch it to them as well. There's other ways like lectures and workshops, or webinars hosted by Wes, I'm just saying. And then there's candidate relationship management, employee inbound recruiting. You can do some career sites, or even job advertising. These are all different avenues that you can go down without just using website or social to promote that. Now, with these channels, I always say a word of caution. You want to make sure that your messaging, your imagery, and your design is consistent across platforms. And that's why we really push that strategy, because then you're able to strategize where and what is being said on each platform, because authenticity is essential when you are communicating your employer brand. So after that, we develop an employer value proposition. Now, this one is almost as hard as the differentiator, and it is not as simple as, like Shauna had said, like we have pizza on Fridays, and that's our value proposition. I always say, okay, like what kind of pizza are we getting it from? Little Caesars, or are we getting it from 13 Pies? Because
Is there pineapple? That's a big debate. Yeah.
Is there pineapple? Do we get a beer with it? What's happening here? Wine, beer, there's more to it. So it goes beyond those little perks. Those little perks are fun and they still contribute to the overall culture and organization. But the employer value proposition is where your company needs and your talent needs kind of interject and unite. So what are you going to offer to ensure this talent is going to be passionate about working for your company? So if we go back to Shauna's research that she mentioned before at the start of the presentation, the top two deciding factors for people were compensation and benefits and flexibility in the work environment. So what does the compensation and benefits mean to your employee persona? Or the demographic within the employee persona? I'm sorry, a message just popped up here about Zoom. I'm just going to exit out of it. Okay. So you want to go back. Is it really family oriented in your culture? Would those benefits needs have to fit more families and offer something that you can have lots of contributors on there? Or is it a lot of like a small tech startup wouldn't maybe need as much compensation and benefits, and maybe they want to be looking into being compensated with shares into the growing tech business? All of these things have to be considered and looked at to see if your organization can A, offer it, and B, is if your personas want that compensation. And that could be all kind of worked out in the research as well. Flexibility in the work environment. Are you an organization that needs people in the office or wants people to want to be in the office? Do you want to be flexible? Is it more remote based? And going back to your employee personas, do they want that? To find out what they want is all done in that external research and with the personas bit. And this is a key piece, and this can be included in your job postings, in your organic social feeds. All of that is a value proposition for these people to be attracted to working to your organization. And then it does meet your organizational needs. I'm just having tech issues all day. I've done this before a million times, but today is not my day. I'm going to blame it on the 42 weather, okay? My bones are just like crunching in. So next up is brand guidelines. Now, you probably already, if you're a larger organization, you probably already do have some brand guidelines established for your overarching brand. But something should be created and established for your employer brand, because it would have a different tone and voice from what you're reaching for your consumers or your target audiences there. These assets would be used to set your brand apart and clearly define that this is an employer brand, and also create available resources to create campaign materials that either your internal creative team or communications team could use, or an outside agency. It's a nice little package that makes sure that there is brand consistency throughout all the channels and messaging. Some of the materials that would be included in brand guidelines would be kind of imagery parameters, color palettes, maybe even some logo variations, audience breakdown, so their employee personas and kind of what channels they would be on, and the voice of the employee brand. And last but not least, the numbers, the established KPIs, the most important part. I always say, like, Shauna's heard this joke about a million times now, but when I was little, I was not expecting I would be a career woman obsessed with Excel sheets and inputting data and then figuring out what's working and not working. Like, I wanted to be a beauty queen, but it turns out that I like cheese too much and it just doesn't work. So with the KPIs, this can be pulled from your internal data and your external data, but these are ways to measure the success of your employee brand. And I always stress the importance of establishing this when you develop your employee brand. This makes sure that you're going in the right direction. Some examples for employee brand metrics is a lot different from what you would use for targeted campaigns or even brand awareness for that matter. So one of them would be time to hire. How long does it take you to hire a quality candidate? This could be as simple as setting up an Excel sheet for someone internally to input the data saying, I posted a job this date for this position and it took us 3 weeks to fill it. And then you just track that for each of those postings. And depending how often you hire, you could do it monthly, you could do it every 6 months or annually to review that data to make sure that are we connecting to the audience? Are we using the right channels? Are our differentiators hitting? All of those factors will kind of, or all that data will kind of give you information as how successful that is going for you. Cost per hire is another one. So how much does it cost you to hire an individual? So you could go as in depth as looking at how many company hours it takes to get a posting up, or how much the HR time that it takes to onboard or source candidates. The number of applications is a huge one too. So you kind of want to have 2 columns for this one. You want to have one for the number of applicants and then the number of quality applicants and where those applicants are coming from. All of that data is really good. So you may get 100 applicants, but let's say only 2 were of quality. So you want to look at where you're posting the job. Are we hitting the right employee personas? Are we hitting the right motivators? Do we define ourselves enough value prop? All of that needs to be reviewed if you're not getting enough quality candidates. And then if you're advertising, then you would go back to more of the advertising metrics of click on application, the click-through rate, seeing how many fill out an application form, so a conversion rate that you can do through Google Analytics. Now, some agencies can manage this process for you, but it is, once you establish it and set it up, it is quite easy for an internal employee to do that for you as well. So what can you do now? One of the biggest things for employer branding, or the scariest thing, is knowing where to start and where to go. You may have an internal perception of your company right now, but we are big believers in fact checking that with research. So you could try your hand at internal research, but I always suggest to go to an agency like Insightrix. And they're really good to work with within budgets to see what you can afford. You can do smaller research, you can do larger research. And then with that fact sheet that we gave you guys, you could try to do employer branding internally, but there are lots of agencies that do employer branding as well. I know one of them is called Chess Club. I don't know if you know them, but we do employer branding and we work with a great research firm. So does anyone have any questions for us? Oh, wait 1 second. Sorry. I'm going to review. Oh, look at this. Can you guys see my screen? The percentages? Shauna, can you see it?
I can, yes.
Okay. So it's 100% affiliation. Now, I'm not sure if everyone got to go on there. Okay. So yeah, 100% affiliation. The last time we did these 2 presentations, we did it at Innovation Place, which is heavy tech. And most of that was achievement and a little bit of power. And then we did this presentation with Chamber, and it was mostly achievement. So this is really cool that this one is affiliation.
That is cool.
That is great. So does anyone have any questions for us?
Those percentages, Larry, just goes to show you about the different personas, right? How we can do 3 of these webinars and how you can have the variety of people. Like I would say I'm much more on the achievement side of things, but then you can start to see how you can develop personas based on what really matters to different individuals. So that was really awesome that actually just happened.
Yeah, it was cool. So I see one question here. So do you have a range of what a smaller research versus larger research project would cost? Of course, cost, it's always a bit of a hard one to answer, but really what Larry and I try and do is come up with an approach that would work for you. So yes, there is a scale, and I can go into kind of what those numbers would be, but I don't want to, commit to anything without actually knowing what the needs are. So in a very vague way, there is a scale, yes, but what we really try and do is work with each one of our clients or potential clients to come up with something that makes the most sense to them. So you might not need to do, from a research standpoint, the full external audit or the full internal audit. So that would be, the full meal deal, if you will. We can always scale that back. We can do it in phases. You might only need a piece of that depending on where you at in your kind of employer branding schedule. So yeah, I would say that there is a scale, but it's a very flexible scale. No one has any other questions? It could be of anything at this point.
Would anybody like to hear Larry sing? No.
Yeah.
We'll take Spice Girl requests only.
Yeah. Which Spice Girl song would you like to hear?
If there are no other questions popping into the chat, do you guys have any closing remarks before we let the folks go and give them some downtime?
If anybody just needs some help, let's say they are trying to tackle employer branding internally, please just reach out to us. We're so willing to help you guys along this. I think it's really important now to focus on what your offerings are as an organization. It kind of helps you rediscover who you guys are. So please reach out. We do, you guys do have that fact sheet with my email address on it, and Shauna put hers in the chat as well. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, any questions? And Larry and I talk all the time. So yeah, feel free, even if you just want to schedule a coffee Zoom or something like that to talk about anything you heard today that might apply. Always happy to do that as well. So thanks for taking your lunch hour and joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you too. That was awesome. I personally loved all the pictures in it. Will Ferrell, he's my guy. So with that, I hope everyone has a great rest of their day and stays as warm as physically possible in this ice box called Saskatchewan.
Yes, stay warm. Okay, thank you.
Okay, see you guys.
Bye-bye.